The showdown between Senate Republican holdouts and the White House comes to a head on Tuesday when the nomination of Todd Blanche for Attorney General is scheduled to come up for a Judiciary Committee vote. And survivors in the Jeffrey Epstein abuse scandal are really hoping politics can just tip the scales against Blanche right now.
I think America is at a turning point, and Congress has to decide. There are elections coming up, and the American people, if you sit down with voters and you really do discussion, of course, we talk about affordability. Those are big issues. But when you put the Epstein files in front of their faces and you directly connect their candidates with not supporting survivors, it moves the issue. It moves votes. People in America care about this because it's not singular abuse. It is whole corruption.
And with us today, we have Danny Bensky, teacher, dancer, choreographer, and Epstein survivor. So, Danny, thank you so much for being here. You know, off camera, we were talking about whether you now have to turn around and go back to D.C., but I'm interested to know, do you think the message is really getting through to lawmakers?
I hope so. You know, what we see on the inside versus what we're hearing on the outside are two very different things. A lot of focus on the slush fund right now, a lot of focus on language of bills. And what we're seeing and feeling on the inside is a lot of humanity coming from these offices. When we met with Senator Cornyn's office, we haven't had a chance to meet with Senator Cornyn himself yet, but we did meet with his head judiciary staffer, and a very human conversation where he did understand and he did see the level of corruption and obstruction that we're facing.
And I just want to go through some of those other skeptics, Republican skeptics, and get your take on this. So as recent as Thursday, we know that Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, who said he's very concerned about the weaponization of the Justice Department. We also have main incumbent Susan Collins up for re-election in November, who said she's also, waiting to hear about the fund and Trump's IRS issues. So have any of the survivors made any outreach or talked to those two?
Well, we were just on the Hill dropping off books. So the Redacted Reading Room and Defiance.org got together and they bound these books for us that are all of the files that we brought into Congress this week. So we were able to drop off the files, and we had highlighted and we had flagged investigative leads. And so we went around to these offices and we started with all the offices on Senate Judiciary, but we did make an attempt to meet with Cassidy's office as well as a couple of others that we feel like might be on the fence. And we did request meetings with them, and we really hope that they'll take us up on those meetings.
Talk about the meeting with Todd Blanche and what happened behind those closed doors. There was a report in US Today that said that he was combative. He was also dismissive. Is that what happened?
Very condescending. I mean, it was every time that we would start to talk about anything, he would change it and turn it with language and say that he was just arguing his own language. We would say that, you said that the files weren't mishandled, and he'd say, I never said that, or he would correct us when we said, okay, in the 6 million files, he'd be like 3 million. And all of us collectively would be like, okay, we're not going to get anywhere with that. So let's okay, that's your opinion. Let's move on to the next thing. Why was Ghislaine Maxwell transferred? Why? And we had very clear questions that we went in with, and he just danced around topics, didn't answer anything head on, and was highly dismissive is right. It was just everything would get to the point. What are you getting at? And to talk to survivors of this country that way is so incredibly disappointing, because you're not looking at this as the largest sex trafficking ring in modern day history, and you're not looking at it of how it affects people today. Like, there are still sex trafficking rings out there. We're seeing the demand has never slowed. It's shifted online in a big way, which is even scarier for our youth. And so you're just not considering the files with the weight that they need to be considered. We know that they hold investigative leads. We know that the redactions were so poorly done. He didn't have answers for any of that. Instead, he said, you're blindsiding me. And not only did he say that, we've been asking for meetings for 8 to 9 months at this point. And he said, oh, so-and-so told me that you were on the Hill. And it's like, so the whole setup of this meeting was so wrong. It was just sort of this passing. Tom Tillis held him to it, and he knew that he had to do it. So he went in for a very quick check the box, and that was it. And
he was going through the motions.
So disappointing.
And just to follow up on that, when you have any victims of abuse, it's hard for women to come forward as it is.
Yeah.
So what was running through your mind where you have this person being dismissive, being combative, being condescending, and you know that you have to speak about something that's so sensitive? I mean, how How did you do that? What were you thinking?
Well, that's where it gets so frustrating because I think at least when we're in offices on both sides, both Democrats and Republican, there is a sense of humanity, and there was no sense of humanity in this meeting. There was like, okay, can you, like, we had a survivor share intimate details of her story, and he's like, can you get to the point? Like, really? That's the way you're going to treat survivors in this country? So it was incredibly disheartening, and I think that it does send a chilling effect to the rest of our country because it shows his priorities. His priority is always going to be to reputational harm and protecting the administration and himself and the president, not the American people, and certainly not survivors.
And real quick, you will be going back on Tuesday? You're still
I hope
figuring
so.
it out?
We'll see.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on if this vote happens, right? We've had so much back and forth about if this vote is really going to happen. If it does, yeah, I'll be there.
Well, let us know. Danny Bensky, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
to see you.